So this time we're going to talk about control versus letting go, sort of autonomy and authority, and we've spoken about this ourselves many times. The different ways and different places it can show up in work, especially in engineering teams.
Yeah. I think it's a natural sort of human drive, isn't it? Especially in uncertainty, to want to be in control. We feel a bit nervous and anxious when we can't control things. But part of working as a team, in a company and with each other, is about letting go of control and trusting our colleagues, trusting each other to be able to do what's needed. So yeah,
and I think on that, just briefly, you talk about the teams. It's having creating a trusting team, right? And for that, we'll probably talk about this another time, but you've got limits on the team size of how you build really strong trust, right? So I think that's an important topic. It's a side topic for now, but in terms of relinquishing your own personal control over things and getting out to the team, the extent to which you can do that relies on the size of the team and everything you've got there. You need to have a good unit of people you can trust to have that shared control over, whether you're individual contributor or the manager.
Yeah, it probably goes back to that sort of tribal thing, doesn't it? Where you sort of have that within small tribes. Your reputation is there for everyone to see, and you either trust somebody or you don't. But when you get into bigger societies or bigger teams or bigger companies, then you become you don't know people quite so well, and you have that trust has to be a little bit more it's more a leap of faith, I think, and that's probably where you get bureaucracy in organisations is an attempt to control, which it doesn't vibe well sometimes with certain people who, especially engineers, who tend to want to be more self-organising, more autonomous, and engineers are close to the problems that they're solving, and they sort of crave that sense of being in control of their local area. But if certain things are imposed on them by maybe a controlling manager or a controlling CTO, it can kind of backfire, and people tend to reject that, and then if they rely on the CTO too much or the manager too much, they develop a sense of helplessness. They don't take control themselves because they're used to being helped.
Yeah, and you end up with this situation, right, where you end up with a bottleneck of authority. Everything has to go up and down the chain to get approval to do things, and then there's less motivation. You and I talk about this in various places, but the importance of self-determination theory, and with that, autonomy is a huge part of that. Is what gives humans this motivation to just keep going and do the best that they can and get involved and just basically stay motivated. Without that autonomy, that just drops right off, and so your productivity drops and your engagement in the team drops, and then your trust drops, and so everything slows down, and on top of that you have this feedback sort of authority question loop up and down all the time to a single bottleneck, and it just slows everything down.
There's a couple of things there. There's definitely the bottleneck effect. Some people like to be valuable and to be relied upon in certain areas and to have expertise in a certain area, but that brings about a low bus factor, and that person can then become a bottleneck because their knowledge, they're the only ones with the knowledge, and that's where we need to encourage people to let go of that need to be the one with the information, or the one that's where information can get siloed. another thing that you were talking about, this thing of authority, and it reminds me of something I think I read in the book Turn the Ship Around, where the advice is to push the authority to to the ground level in terms of being clear on what decisions can be made by people that are dealing directly with the problems that they see day to day. So it's the people, the engineers that are dealing with their local issues that really should have the authority to be able to have autonomy over changes in that, as long as that's aligned with a bigger picture, a bigger direction.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, is that it needs to be aligned with that bigger direction, and then that comes from transparency from the manager and the leader about, these are our priorities, this is the direction we're going. And another thing is how the transparency behind how you make decisions as the manager and the leader, because then it's easier for the authority to go to where it's needed, as at the edges, and they only need to sort of maybe come up the chain and go up when they need either advice or something that doesn't fit within those parameters, and you get stuck. That is absolutely fine to go up through the loops for that, because it's not for everything. It's for the edge cases and for advice and growth. So
really, I think what you're saying then is like letting go of control is very much the other side of that coin, is about clarity and direction. So if you know what your primary purpose is as a company, as an organization, and then each team knows what their primary purpose is in meeting those meeting that direction, then you can let go more of control. So it's all about having the structures in place so that people have clarity, as well as the knowledge and capability. You can't. You might have you might struggle to let go of control if you don't feel there's the capability where it should be. But then that points to a learning, a training thing, and paradoxically, the only way those people are going to learn is if you trust them, and if you let go, and that they're supported in gaining that knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's an important point in terms of the letting go and the control is different for maybe different levels of experience and seniority. Right? If you first job, junior engineer, right, will need to have less autonomy and direct authority because they have less experience. That they're less, I guess, background and understanding and context of how to make the decisions, make the priority calls, and how to solve the problems. And it expands as you grow. And again, that comes through clarity, right? From another conversation is career pathing and roles, responsibilities, expectations. And you say so much of it, the control letting go comes down to this clarity of what's expected, how do we operate, and just running that through the team, so everyone in the team has the same understanding. It's
providing that overall sort of organizational and structural scaffolding to enable this sense of to enable trust, to enable the sort of letting go, and trusting that people can then rise to the challenge, rise to the. I forget the psychological term, but there's a thing where you give somebody a certain responsibility, and that enables them to rise up to that level of responsibility. It's a motivating. As long as that is the right challenge level and the right stretch, then it can be a motivating force for somebody to grow into that new level of trusted responsibility, I think.
Yeah, and take that to the next level. One of the hardest points of this letting go and control aspect is when you go from being an individual contributor and engineer to a manager or a leader. That is, having been there, that's the hardest
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges you'll face is because the way you have to approach things and think about things, you're used to having your little sphere of control, and all of a sudden you don't have that sphere of control anymore. It's much wider, and you can't control everything in the same way. So you say you have to find a way to let it go, build the trust, and that trust is two ways. You have to trust in the team have to trust in you, and actually a third way, the team have to trust in each other. So it's creating that trusting environment will help you let go and
that's a really
push it to the edges.
Yeah, that's a really important point, isn't it? As an individual contributor, you prize your expertise. You're rewarded for being the expert. People look at you as the expert. And as a manager, you might have come from a back end sort of focus, and suddenly you're dealing with front end and data and integrations and all sorts of other areas that you hadn't been accustomed to. So you're no longer the expert. It's a case of adopting, I think, the beginner's mind and being a learner, freeing yourself up to make some mistakes, to experiment, to learn, and realize that you've got to let go of this identity of yourself as an expert, because in management, I think management is such a complex thing. You're a manager of people, and when it comes to people, nobody can be an expert in people because it's such a fluid, dynamic thing that you really have to be that sort of generalist that can adapt yourself and your approach to the different kind of characters and the different sort of social dynamics that you encounter. So it's all about letting go of this idea of being able to control. We can control and wrangle code and get it to do what we want it to do. But if you take that same mentality to people, it will backfire and come up with all sorts of surprises.
You can't unit test your team.
You can't. No, that'd be handy, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But that's it. This is something I learned discovered when I was at university, moving from like a software engineering degree to communications and psychology, is the complete difference of the mindset from being sort of very engineering software focused. It's ultimately zeros and ones, it's binary. This thing works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then you move over to sort of the people side of things, and it's just full ambiguity. There is no zero, there's one, there's everything in between.
Yeah. It relates to this idea of complex adaptive systems, and a team of people or an organization of people is in itself a complex adaptive system, where we have self-organizing teams that will kind of negotiate. It's a constant negotiation, a constant sort of echoing and feedback within a system, within an ecosystem. And complex adaptive systems, by their nature, cannot be controlled. And if you try to pull one lever over here, which you think is controlling a cause and effect, and it's linear, and you're controlling a certain output over there, what you can't see in a complex adaptive system is all of the second order effects and the downstream consequences of your actions. So it's like an illusion of control. You think that you're controlling something, but you're creating a whole mess somewhere else. And we've all seen it and fallen victim to it and made those mistakes. But that's the thing with self-organizing teams and complexity. It doesn't surrender to our attempts to control it.
Trying to control it, you say, ultimately it just slows everything down, because all the decisions and everything needs to come back. You're adding in just whole to figure out how many, but a whole number of these extra lines of communication, all to one point, as opposed to letting them go round and like in the team, in the circle, communicating the way they need to, rather than one person being the funnel for all communication and decisions within the team. It's really damaging.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? That we think that we're being diligent by wanting to control a certain area, and I'm thinking about things like change approval boards, where you have a committee approach to change, which is actually sort of counterproductive to this agile, iterative, automated release and deployment kind of mentality that has proven through research to be much more effective and resilient and anti-fragile and all of those things. So our attempts to control by having good intent, being diligent and doing the right thing and putting these control gates in place, actually it becomes a bottleneck, and the code can sit there for 3 months and go stale while we're sort of debating about the ins and outs of releasing it.
Yeah. So I think so. Yeah, it's another place where we see the control thing is I've seen quite a lot. So I've seen a lot of engineers use control to take too much personal ownership over either a given code base or a given bit of code, and they use it to almost make themselves indispensable.
Yeah.
Right. So I've seen that sort of, and it gets even worse when you're in sort of either a low trust environment or, just the macro environment now is kind of, generally speaking, a little more lower trust because we see so many like big, massive tech layoffs in the news. Right. So people are kind of a little bit more scared, a little bit more nervous and anxious. So creating almost like your little fiefdom of, well, this is my bit of code. This is the thing that I have built. This is needed for the company and the product to work. If I don't share it, they can't get rid of me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a very short-term view, right? It's because it locks you in there, but it stops you from growing. And at some point that will become sort of obsolete, or you'll have to share it or hand it over with somebody. So it's a case of you have to have a little bit more faith and be part of the bigger picture rather than just try and keep control. And this is mine. This is we've all done it to some degree. This is my baby, and I don't want to share it with anyone else.
Yeah, it doesn't scale. It just doesn't scale, and it makes you the bottleneck. And it might protect you in the short term, but in the long term, it's a red flag. It's a red flag to things like burnout. Your knowledge, your indispensability means that people will be calling on you all the time, and you can't move on to other things. And it's a kind of thing, that can so easily be a leader to burnout and stress to be able to maintain that. And it's an anti-pattern really in terms of how modern software is developed. We have been singing the virtues of collaboration and of avoiding knowledge silos, but yet our attempts to control creates that very silo and that protected gated knowledge.
Yes. Yeah, I think, the lack of desire for documenting things and writing documentation and handing over things and creating good notes, that's I've seen that's pretty prevalent too. And that's sometimes it comes from the control aspect. Sometimes it comes from the it's not the fun part of the job aspect, right? So that's, again, a topic for another day. But, when it comes around to this, it's, I've seen it several times, I'm sure you have. It's we'll just keep it silent, keep it like a walled garden. It's kind of secret, and it can happen at the team level, not just the individual level. We expand it out, the whole team can then say a bit too much control over this is us, this is our garden. We're not going to let anyone in. We're not going to tell anyone how it works or document outside of it. It's our secret little knowledge. And, again, we need to be a part of the bigger thing, the bigger company, and to be scalable and grow and give ourselves more opportunities. We need to sort of open it out and say, again, something engineers need to be better at in general is this is what we did. Check out what we've done. I mean, we think this is pretty good. If you think we can improve, let us know.
Yeah.
But you also, look at what we've done.
Yeah,
you know.
It's probably something that people don't typically get the opportunity to talk about in their teams or organisations. They don't talk about their struggles with control and letting go. They probably don't talk about. They haven't, if you see that behaviour, it might be hard to criticise it, or it might be hard to sort of flag it up and point to it. So it's kind of I think a good cultural practice to open up these kinds of subjects to wider discussion, so that we can be more attuned to when we're seeing these anti-patterns, and when we're struggling with aspects of control or letting go.
Yeah, because we all fall into them, right? We're kind of, you and I are not immune to it either. We all fall into it, and often it's really helpful to have an environment, or you say have it be part of a sort of constant ongoing conversation, so that it's not like a big shock, or it's not like a big change, and it's, going back to our conversation on feedback, it's part of the regular. It's the way we operate. Is we're aware of this. We know it can be a problem. It's an issue. It's something to keep talking about. It's one of the things we need to keep on top of, to keep everyone in the team running as well as they can, to keep the team running as well as it can. Yeah,
it's one of these things where, in an uncertain world, in uncertain business environments, that this need for control brings rigidity, when actually what we need is flexibility and being able to respond to what's changing. So this need for control is probably like a need for homeostasis, or a need for fixedness, and that's limiting in itself. It sends out, I think, the wrong message. What we want is flexible, adaptable teams and people to respond to changing business environments.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right, and I see it again where I think the control often comes in more when the environment itself is more chaotic. So this is something for managers to be particularly aware of. Is if you're creating like a really chaotic environment, you're going to have problems with people over controlling, not letting go, because people want that security. That sort of confidence of what they're doing, what they're owning, and also zooming back out, that the organisation outside of your team is chaotic. You're going to want to put more control in there. But it's your responsibility to try and be that shield against the chaos for your team, and just create that sort of positive environment in which they can work in the autonomous way that you want them to go. Pushing the authority to the edges and building trust in your team.
It's probably worth thinking about. It's a good point about chaos, because in a genuine chaotic environment, so if a fire breaks out, then you want some sort of control. You want to have a protocol of what you're supposed to be doing, where the fire extinguishers are, and what's going on. And I remember I was doing CPR once, and the paramedics came along, and the police were there, and I was absolutely obeying every single thing I was told to do, because they're the experts, and it was a chaotic situation where I didn't have the knowledge or information, and I was being told what to do and listening. So it's distinguishing, I think, between is a fire breaking out, or is our system on fire? In which case, that's a chaotic situation in which you do need control, and you need to conform to some authority or some protocol. Versus a more sort of flexible, uncertain world that isn't necessarily chaotic, where that's where the sort of trust needs to come in, and the letting go needs to come in, I think.
I think so. Simon Sinek talks about this quite a lot in terms of what they've done in the military, which is particularly the US military, they organise now around teams, and there's a lot of autonomy there. But when something like that is some type of emergency, the direct control or command that kicks in, and they will obey it, because they know it's the right thing to do. It's they need to follow this order to have everyone aligned, and that's the the special case, but the respect to do that comes from having this autonomy and this trust there, right? So there's trust around all the layers and up, and so that when you do need to do that, okay, it's a real fire drill. You do this, you do that, you do that, you do that.
Yeah.
Then you can control all the aspects.
Yeah.
But you build the respect and the trust to do that by not doing it every minute of every day.
Yes, I think that's a really good example. Yeah, it's situational, isn't it? It's the military is one thing, software engineering is another thing. Sometimes there's some crossovers between them, but it's that understanding of
human dynamics.
Yeah, right. What is an emergency? What is a situation where we want that command and control, and what other situations do we want to build up autonomy? And I think it's a really good point you made about giving that autonomy, giving that trust, giving that responsibility, then makes people much more amenable when there is a fire, and it's all hands to the deck to try to sort out a problem. I think that's really useful.
As the end, people then understand that an orchestrated movement is going to be more effective. We've got 5 people. There are 5 parts to play. You're doing this. You're doing that. It's a much more effective way of doing something very quickly and rapidly. But it does take autonomy away from people. So it can't work on the long term. But in the short term, actually can really work to help bond the team to you've probably been in like war rooms and on these things where people getting together to actually fix something that some type of fire drill, something's gone down, or whatever it might be. You get together in a really organised way for a short amount of time, and that can actually do really good things for the team. But you do that all day, every day, and it burns people out.
Exactly. I think that's a really good distinction. Well, I think we touched on some really interesting nuances there around control and letting go and situational stuff. I think that was really, really useful.
You say it's all so much nuance, right? And it's the difference between the human side of engineering and the software side of engineering.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
There we go. Before you go, I would like to ask you a quick favour, if I may. If you enjoyed this discussion, even one little light bulb moment or perhaps a raised eyebrow, please consider just liking this video or even subscribing to the channel. I can't begin to tell you how useful it is for John and I to get this as we grow and develop this channel and human-centric engineering in general. Also, if you're interested in what we do and want to find out more, just check out our website at human-centricengineering.com. We'll put a link somewhere. Thank you so much. Your engagement really does help.